Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for Kell Brook versus Amir Khan. This fight goes down on the 19th of February and it takes place at the Manchester Arena. It goes down on Sky Sports box office in the UK. Now, as most people say, and I agree with this fight is years too late. In my opinion, it should have happened in around 2015 when Kell Brook was the IBF welterweight champion. Amir Khan was coming off a really good win over Devon Alexander. To me, that's the time period where this fight should have happened. As of right now, both guys are well past their best. Both guys have one foot out of the door. And on the surface, it does seem like a cynical cash out. When these guys should have fought, they didn't give it to us. And now this is their only option. They're taking the fight. That's how it appears as an outsider looking in. And as a boxing fan, that's how I feel about this fight. So, am I going to pay for it? No, I'll find other means of watching it. But at the same time, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a fun fight. It's got that car crash TV vibe written all over it, so it could be good fun. It could be good fun. It is what it is, really. What can you say? What can you say? But yeah, where do we start with this fight? Let's briefly break down the tale of the tape. Amir Khan has a record of 34 wins, 5 defeats, 21 of his 34 wins coming by way of knockout. Kell Brook has a record of 39 wins, 3 defeats, 27 of his 39 wins coming by way of knockout. Amir Khan is listed as 5'8.5" with a 71-inch reach, whereas Kell Brook is listed as 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. So Kell Brook is half an inch taller, but Amir Khan has a 2-inch reach advantage. Naturally, I do believe Kell Brook is the bigger man, carries more weight, etc. Both of these guys are orthodox fighters, and interestingly, both guys are 35 years old, but neither guy is a fresh 35 years old. Both guys have taken a lot of punishment in their career. Khan's been knocked out several times, Kell Brook's been stopped a few times, and he's had eye surgery on both eyes. So, you know, both guys are kind of worse for wear at this point in time in their careers. And quite frankly, it's really hard to tell who is more shot, really, you know? But let's talk about the fight. One thing we have to discuss in regards to this fight is at a 149 catch weight. As we know, towards the end, Kell Brook really struggled to make welterweight, which is 147 pounds. I mean, go back and watch the weigh-in for Terence Crawford. Kell Brook looked like a crackhead on the scales. 2 extra pounds is still going to be a really hard ask for Kell Brook. So in regards to the weight cut, I'm not saying it's easy for Amir Khan at this stage of his career, but I certainly think the weight cut will have more of an effect on Kell Brook. And on top of that, apparently there is a rehydration clause in this fight. I'm not sure what the rehydration clause is, but that is the rumour going around. So in my opinion, the weight stipulations definitely favour Amir Khan, and you have to consider that going into this fight. You know, we're not looking at these guys prime for prime anymore, because prime for prime, I was picking Kell Brook to beat Amir Khan at 147. You know, just because of the cliche timing beats speed, I think Kell Brook would have caught Amir Khan when they fought prime for prime. But right now, given where both guys are at in their careers, I find this fight really hard to call. I could see this fight going either way with any outcome. I could see a stoppage on either side. I could see an early stoppage on either side. I could see a fight where both guys are clearly past their best and it's a boring decision fight. I can see a messy fight. Honestly, I think this fight has the potential to be anything, really. It's so hard to call right now. And that does make it intriguing to a certain degree. I know I shat on the fight earlier, given where they're at in their careers, but it could actually, in a bizarre way, make for a really intriguing, fun fight. Who knows? But I'm not really going to go into too much detail what each guy should do, but I'll give a brief description on what I believe each fighter should do to win this fight. And I'll start with Amir Khan. I think Amir Khan going into this fight, it's going to be a weird one. I think a lot of people will speculate that Amir Khan's best chances would rely on him utilising that speed to basically get in and out, land his punches, and stay away from Kell Brook's right hand and try to avoid being timed. Essentially, I think people will be calling for Amir Khan to box a disciplined fight and essentially try to outpoint Kell Brook purely by his speed and his punches in bunches. Me personally, I'm not really sure that's the best course of action for this sort of fight, especially given where both guys are at. I think the longer you leave Kell Brook in there, the more chances he's got of catching Amir Khan with a timed right hand. And as we know, if Amir Khan gets caught on the chin, it can be lights out. So honestly, if I'm training Amir Khan, if I'm around Amir Khan, I would suggest to him that he jumps on Kell Brook right away, behind that jab, punches in bunches. I'm actually looking for Amir Khan to step to Kell Brook behind the jab and be aggressive. Essentially try to overwhelm Kell Brook early on. I'm talking from the very first round. Step to Kell Brook, try to push him back with the jab and throw those combinations, punches in bunches, and essentially try to overwhelm Kell Brook with the speed, the volume of the combinations, etc, etc. I mean, look at Kell Brook versus Terence Crawford. Kell Brook's punch resistance in that fight was nothing short of abysmal, and if Amir Khan catches Kell Brook early on with that speed, he can definitely buzz Kell Brook, and if he jumps right on him, I could easily see a scenario where Kell Brook can't really defend himself, and I've got a suspicion that Kell Brook's punch resistance in this fight will be affected by that weight cut. So for me, if I'm Amir Khan, I'm gonna jump on Kell Brook right away. Rapid fire combinations, hand speed. Kell Brook's not really seen that in his career when you consider who he's fought. So yeah, try to really surprise Kell Brook, try to overwhelm him, and I would say go for the early stoppage if I'm Amir Khan. Because when you look at it, Kell Brook is a more methodical fighter. His output isn't always the highest. He likes to stay behind the jab, ping your head back with the jab, and he'll try and counter you with that straight right hand. For me, if Amir Khan tries to box this fight too cautiously, I could see a scenario where he starts to gas out. Since Amir Khan's come back from that Canelo Alvarez knockout loss, obviously he's not really been the same fighter. He's not been like an elite level fighter, but you can really tell that in his cardio. Amir Khan always used to have really good cardio back in the day. But I think since the Canelo Alvarez loss, I've seen fights where his cardio looks noticeably worse, such as the Samuel Vargas fight, for example, you know. So I think if Amir Khan hangs around and tries to box too cautious, he could slow down that little bit to give Kell Brook the opportunity to land that right-hand counter. And even a drained Kell Brook, if he lands that shot, he will hurt Amir Khan. So for me personally, Amir Khan needs to jump on Kell Brook right away, go for the gusto, go for the knockout. I think Amir Khan has the balls to do that. I think he's got the tools to do that, and I think he's got enough power to hurt this version of Kell Brook. So I would roll the dice. Fuck it. I would go right at Kell Brook and try to take this guy out early. Try to test that suspect punch resistance, you know, because Amir Khan is not the only guy in this fight who has suspect durability, you know. And you know, yeah, that's how I see it for Amir Khan, quite frankly. As for Kell Brook, to me, Kell Brook needs to be Kell Brook. Kell Brook, to me, in his prime, was one of the most talented fighters in the UK. I see Kell Brook as one of the biggest waste of talent in British boxing in the last 20 years. Kell Brook was an excellent boxer-puncher / counter-puncher hybrid. Wonderful jab, beautiful straight right hand, lovely uppercut, great accuracy, really good at setting traps also. And I think Kell Brook in this fight needs to divert back to that if he's going to beat Amir Khan. He needs to be pumping that ramrod jab to offset Amir Khan and keep Amir Khan off balance so Khan can't come in and land those speedy combinations. I'd also like Kell Brook in this fight to vary that jab from body to head. In fact, I want to see Kell Brook jab to the body quite a lot in this fight. Not only is it a good shot to, deflate your opponent's gas tank, a good jab to the solar plexus, if it's done consistently, can really drain your opponent's energy, but from my rationale, Amir Khan is a really easy guy to bait when it comes to setting traps. I mean, we saw that in the Danny Garcia fight, where Garcia was getting comprehensively outboxed in the first 2 rounds, but after the second round, Danny Garcia started to go to the body more and more. He was basically exclusively throwing to the body, to the point where Khan's hands dropped, and then all of a sudden, Danny Garcia came back up the top with a left hook, and Khan defensively was all over the place, and he couldn't avoid that shot. So I want to see Kell Brook stab that jab to the body, try to lower Khan's hands, and come back over the top with an overhand right. Kell Brook in this fight needs to be coming up with ideas on how to set traps for Amir Khan so he can land that money punch, which is the straight right hand. And obviously on top of that, when Khan does explode with combinations and that hand speed, which we know he has, Kell has to be comfortable punching with Amir Khan. Kell Brook can't afford to just tuck up and get overwhelmed, because in the exchanges, Amir Khan is extremely vulnerable. We've seen that throughout his career. So if Kell can keep a calm head and tuck up, and have the calmness to look for openings when Khan is opening up himself, then there's always the chance that you're going to catch Amir Khan in the exchanges. But the key is, of course, not to get overwhelmed in the process. You've got to have the mindset to actually fire back and pick out the openings, kind of thing. Another thing for Kell Brook in this fight, as we know, Kell Brook has a really good uppercut. And one thing I've noticed about Amir Khan, particularly when he gets tired, particularly since he came back from the Canelo Alvarez fight, he's clinching a lot more now. He falls into the clinch a lot more, and he's not particularly subtle when he does it. And on top of that, he doesn't really defend himself well in the clinch. So for me, Kell Brook needs to be firstly looking out for the signs of when Khan is coming in for the clinch and try and time Khan with the uppercut. And even when Khan is in the clinch, look for the uppercut in the clinch. I would imagine that even a drained Kell Brook is stronger than Amir Khan. Khan's never really been the strongest welterweight in the world, and I think he can be outmanned by Kell Brook in that department. So I think the uppercut for Kell Brook in this fight could be key, particularly when Khan is falling into the clinch or in the clinch. So yeah, that's another shot to look out for Kell Brook. Ultimately, the counterpunch opportunities will be there for Kell Brook. Khan leaves a lot of openings, as we know, and on top of that, he's got a suspect chin. So Kell Brook just needs to remain calm and look for those openings to try and catch Amir and essentially knock him out. But yeah, I mean, to me, this fight, given where both guys are at right now, it's extremely hard to call. To me personally, Kell Brook basically needs to revert to type, whereas Amir Khan, I think, needs to be a bit more aggressive than he usually has been in the past to stand his best chance of winning this fight. I seriously think if Amir Khan jumps on Kell Brook right away, there's a good chance he could get an early stoppage in this fight. Just something I see there. And that leaves us for the final prediction for Kell Brook versus Amir Khan. Again, I have to confess, I'm not really confident on this one. I could see it going either way, but my gut instinct, believe it or not, tells me Amir Khan's going to win this fight. I think the weight in which this fight is at favours Amir Khan, and on top of that, the apparent rehydration clause could be very detrimental, or will be very detrimental, to Kell Brook. So I'm going to go with a bit of a surprise one. I'm going to go with Amir Khan by stoppage, and I actually believe he's going to stop Kell Brook in the first 4 rounds. I'm going to roll the dice on this one. I'm going to go a bit out there with my prediction. So yeah, Amir Khan by early stoppage, first 4 rounds. That's what I'm going for in this fight. But honestly, this fight could go a whole heap of different ways. I wouldn't be surprised to see any outcome whatsoever in this fight. So there we go. My prediction for Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. I've got Amir Khan in the first 4 rounds. What about you guys? How do you feel about this fight? I've got a feeling Amir Khan's just going to jump right on him and try and blitz him, try and get him out of there, you know? But share your thoughts below. What do you think about this fight? It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.